Even if ISIS is destroyed, their impact on Syria will be seen for years to come. CBS News foreign correspondent Charlie D'Agata has reported on the front lines in the country. He also reported on the terror group's tactics to recruit a new generation in Mosul, Iraq, for CBS On Assignment in 2017. Here is his reporter's notebook.
One of the more disturbing elements of the story that we've covered was something we did for CBSN On Assignment called The Children of ISIS. And we focused specifically on children of the caliphate, or the so-called caliphate, and the way they were being indoctrinated over the years. You have to remember that there were 10 million people that were under the control of ISIS, and they were running the schools. One of the disturbing things we saw were young kids, sort of grade school age, and they were being taught how to count using Kalashnikovs and timers on bombs in order to tell a time. And that was in English. It just goes to show you how they were trying to indoctrinate children at a very young age to get used to this idea of violence. And they were being taught ISIS's brand of Islamic extremism. And once they got old enough, they were being taught to fight. Some of the children that were there, or young people and teenagers, had volunteered for ISIS, but we have to put a caveat on that as well, because when ISIS had taken over that region in Syria and Iraq, you really only had one choice. You either stayed with ISIS or you were against them, and if you did so, you were risking your lives. So parents were sending their kids to school, and they had to be taught by ISIS. It wasn't an option. And they were focusing particularly on young teenage kids. They didn't want the older teenagers who had probably already formed their opinion and might rebel against some of the teaching. So they wanted kids that were sort of 13, 15, 16 years old who they could still form and teach. There are also a number of Yazidi children who were taken as slaves. And we spoke to one Yazidi young man who was taught to be an ISIS fighter, taught to believe in ISIS's brand of Islam, and taught to become violent. Once he was freed, he is really messed up. He's not sure what to do. He's unemployed. There's a lot of resentment. And I think what we have to look at, nobody wants to predict what's going to happen in this region over the course of the next months and years when ISIS finally does meet its end. But what comes after that? And that's one of the huge concerns here. What's to become of the young men and women who were raised under ISIS and taught ISIS's brand of Islamic extremism, who have resentment, or coming back to not much of a home, not much of a city, who have lost their relatives, their fathers, their uncles and cousins. There's a lot of anger and a lot of resentment, and they will pose a security risk to this region for years to come. Charlie D'Agata in northern Iraq.